All right, y'all, you are in for a real treat on this one because we have some amazing slow-mo footage from SpaceX of Ship 31's 6-engine static fire to talk about. Plus, we have some updates to the timeline ahead of Starship Flight 5, and as you can see, we have the return of a full stack back here to the launch site ahead of what we expect will be a wet dress rehearsal, and the return of full stack testing. But it wasn't quite a wet dress rehearsal yet. But why is SpaceX doing a wet dress rehearsal now, a full 2 months ahead of an expected flight? Well, we'll talk about it. Howdy, Tank Watchers. I'm Jack Beyer for NSF, and this is your Starbase Update, sponsored by Brilliant. Okay, let's start off with the future of the Starship program, Ship 33 and Ship 34, the first two Starship version 2 vehicles. Recently, Ship 33 received its second aft flap, completing the major components on the vehicle. It's sort of hard to tell what's going on with Ship 33 as it's in the back left workstation in Mega Bay 2. As we tend to say, stacking is usually the easy part. The hard part is what comes after that, installation of all the little fiddly bits like the raceways, the heat shield tiles, and all the piping connecting the tanks. Once that's complete, the next step for Ship 33 will be a rollout to the Massey outpost for cryogenic proof testing, which could occur in the next 2 months or so. Of course, Massey's is a busy location right now with the testing of other ships and vehicles, but more on that in just a bit. In other ship construction news, this week we had the extreme pleasure of seeing yet another new Starship begin to be stacked. That's right, Ship 34's payload bay section rolled out of the Star Factory and into the high bay, and as compared to Ship 33's payload section, it looks a little bit more complete. For example, it already has its door, and as a reminder, Ship 33's payload section rolled out without one. Maybe SpaceX is finally starting to get serious about putting a payload on Starship sooner rather than later. I don't know, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. With Ship 34's payload bay section in the high bay, a little bit later in the day on the 19th, Ship 34's nose cone was rolled out of the Star Factory and into the high bay, where it was then stacked onto it. Now, you may be wondering, why is SpaceX using the high bay for initial stacking rather than Mega Bay 2? Well, with Ship 33, which also began initial stacking in the high bay, we surmised that it might be because the welding turntables were not ready yet. But with the rest of Ship 33 being constructed in Mega Bay 2, that doesn't make sense. Up to that point, the only things that had been welded on Mega Bay 2's turntables were the odd development barrel and a test tank before stacking Ship 33. So it's a little bit odd that Ship 34 was not stacked in Mega Bay 2. It could also just be that Mega Bay 2 was going to be occupied with removing Ship 31 from the static fire stand and placing it onto a transport stand. So SpaceX could use the Mega Bay 2 to stack Ship 35 whenever they're ready to do so. Speaking of future Starship hardware, let's take a look inside of the Star Factory where we can see what might be Ship 35's nose cone. We've been tracking this nose cone for a few weeks, and it's quite an interesting process seeing it get built. I certainly hope we get a good view of the heat shield tile installation once SpaceX starts doing that. Next up, you want more ship things? Well, you're in luck. We have more ship things. Next to that nose cone in the Star Factory, we can see what looks to be a LOX header tank that could be for Ship 36. That's right, I said Ship 36. That's a lot of flights from now. SpaceX has a large number of ships in production right now, with Ship 30, of course, fully stacked and getting ready for a wet dress rehearsal, Ship 31 just having been static fired, Ship 32 in the rocket garden, don't worry about it, it's dead, Ship 33 and Ship 34, as we just talked about, Ship 35's nose cone flying around, and potentially here, Ship 36 beginning to be spotted. And speaking of large numbers of things, large language models, which we've all for some reason taken to calling AI these days, are notoriously hard to wrap your head around. But thanks to a course from this week's sponsor, Brilliant.org, I now have a much better idea of how they work. Brilliant has all kinds of amazing courses available, from foundational math all the way up to quantum computing. They just launched a bunch of new data science content, all of which uses actual data from real sources to help you see trends and make better informed decisions. Brilliant is all about hands-on learning by honing your critical thinking skills and teaching you problem solving, which is a way more effective way to learn than just reading something out of a boring textbook. Plus, you don't have to feel like you're chained to your computer and have to set aside blocks of time to be constantly upgrading your gray matter. You can do it right from your phone or tablet whenever you have time. If you make a habit out of learning a little bit each day, in a few months' time you'll be astonished at just how much knowledge you can fit up here. So to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days and get 20% off on an annual premium subscription, visit brilliant.org/NASA spaceflight or scan the QR code on screen. Or you can click the link in the description. Brilliant is such a great sponsor, and they've been sponsoring us for a long time. So be sure to check them out. You're not only helping yourself, but you're helping our channel as well. So thanks. What's that? You were triggered by the word ship? Well, if you want more ships, we've got more ships. Let's take a look now at one of the starships of the week, Ship 31, and its epic 6-engine static fire at Massey's and the crazy slow-mo footage that SpaceX released. At the beginning of the week, it seemed like SpaceX wanted to perform some kind of testing with Ship 31, which was indicated by an active tank farm. But it seems this testing ran into some issues, or maybe it was not planned to be a full static fire, but either way, it stopped without any visible action, such as a spin prime, pre-burner, or static fire test. After whatever happened with that test, there was a lift visible below Ship 31, and it looked like there was a worker on it doing some sort of inspection. The apparently aborted test we just mentioned could have been for a static fire or pre-burner test, so some inspections of the Raptors afterwards is certainly an interesting development. As a quick reminder, Ship 31 still uses Raptor version 2. We expect Raptor version 3 to debut on version 2 of Starship, which would be Ship 33. Also, Ship 31 is currently expected to be paired with Booster 13 and used for Starship Flight 6, so it's next in line to fly after this heap over here. All right, now let's quickly check in with another guest at the Massey Outpost test area, and that is Test Tank 16, which we don't actually know if that's its name, but that's what we're calling it, hence the Test Tank 16 air quotes. Test Tank 16 has been tested already, and you can see it here in the structural test stand with the hydraulic actuators still attached to the tank walls to simulate the forces of launch onto this ship test article. It looks like there's some work ongoing on some parts of the test tank, so SpaceX is following their usual pattern of test, modify, test again, hoping, of course, to learn something useful about the test tank and its implications for version 2 of Starship. Shortly after Ship 31's static fire, SpaceX released another amazing slow-mo video, taking the 6-second duration static fire and slowing it down all the way to a full 5 minutes, showing the entire startup sequence burn and shut down. It's truly amazing to watch. You can see how the 3 Raptor vacuum engines ignite first in a staged sequence, as they begin to belch out flames. That inferno continues for a few seconds as they throttle up. After a bit of time, they start to form shock diamonds as the exhaust flow stabilizes. A few seconds later, you can see ice raining down on the camera as all of that frozen ice is shaken off of the vehicle and ground support equipment from the thrust of the RVACs. Over the course of the fire, you can see the shock diamonds moving up and down. This could be the throttling of the engines as they test a quick thrust profile. Or it could be something else. I am not a rocket scientist. At 4 minutes and 34 seconds in the video, you can see the thrust on the Raptor vacuums become unstable as the engines start to shut down. After that, the Raptor sea level engines start to flicker as well, and the static fire is complete. These slow-mo videos from SpaceX are truly outstanding, and I am so thankful they're releasing content like this. It gives me Space Shuttle main engine startup vibes, or even Saturn V archival vibes, and I just love to see it. And if you love Raptors as much as we do, then be sure to check out our new Raptor Shirt design as part of the Thrust collection. It's really a great shirt. I'm wearing it right now, and I don't know, check it out. With static fire testing complete, SpaceX then rolled Ship 31 back to the production site at the same time as they rolled Booster 12 to the pad, which we'll talk about in just a bit. Once back, the ship was then lifted off the static fire stand and placed onto a transport stand, where it was then rolled into the high bay for what is probably going to be heat shield replacement work. Ship 31 will probably get the same treatment as Ship 30, with an ablative secondary heat shield layer below the tiles and newer, thinner, stronger, upgraded tiles. All right, now let's talk about Pad B. This week was filled with interesting deliveries to the Sanchez lot related to the second pad here in Starbase. First off, we finally got to see the delivery of pieces for the ship quick disconnect arm. Based on comparisons with the current arm installed on Tower 1, the design appears to be the same. However, we'll have to wait for when it's fully assembled to be sure. Of course, when we say current design, we mean the main structure of the thing. Surely there'll be lots of minor tweaks and improvements, but it's hard to tell from the outside. Once it's fully built and complete and on the tower, we'll get a much better idea of the improvements. The QD arm parts went to the Sanchez storage lot, where a lot of other parts for the second launch tower, including the chopsticks, are stored. Additionally, this week, we also caught some footage of some interesting new hardware. Thanks to Andrew R. for snagging this footage for us. I actually was leaving Starbase and saw this truck go by me on Highway 4, so I sounded the alarm and Andrew answered. So again, thank you, Andrew. This interesting hardware could be related to Pad B's new orbital launch mount, or it could be something else. We just don't know yet. Either way, cool to see. Of course, it's still way too early to tell exactly how different the new OLM will be, but with the addition of a flame trench at Pad B, it will likely be a drastically different design. Another thing we captured this week was installation of piping on Tower 2. Of course, Tower 2 had a lot of piping installed at the time of stacking, but there's still a lot more to be done. These pipes don't only transport liquid oxygen and methane, but also other commodities as well, such as nitrogen, helium, and electricity. In this case, the piping features some insulation, so it seems that it could be a commodity that needs to be kept chilled, such as the two cryogenic propellants. All right, now let's check in with something that's very near and dear to all of our hearts out there, and probably is as well to many of you veteran tank watchers out there. And that is, of course, Starhopper. This week, Mary spotted SpaceX beginning to remove the outer layer of metal skin from venerable old Hoppy. That's right, I just called it Hoppy. What are you gonna do about it? We still don't know what's going on with Hopper. Hopefully, SpaceX is not going to scrap Starhopper. Otherwise, they're going to have a grade A mutiny on their hands, at least when it comes to me. Maybe SpaceX is just returning it closer to its post-flight appearance, removing all the cameras and lights and antennas and everything, but then why remove its skin? I honestly don't know, and we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, before SpaceX could roll out Booster 12 and Ship 30, the pad, of course, needs to be ready. One of the early tests of this readiness this week was the raising of the landing rails, which are, of course, crucial in the catch attempt that SpaceX wants to attempt on the next flight. It's hard to spot here, but if you watch it closely, you can see them rising up. Meanwhile, crews in aerial work platforms were hard at work early in the week, with the chopsticks being a major focus of that work. I mean, look at this. It's hard to even identify how many crews are working on them right here. There's just so many. Also this week on the chopsticks, crews began painting all of the reinforced spots. You can see all the work done on the paint job here, with the rust covered in primer and then its final paint job. This completes the month-long reinforcement and refurbishment of the chopsticks. But those reinforced areas were not the only part which received some paint. The landing rails also got repainted black, presumably since they were also recently worked on. And those weren't the only parts being refurbished and repainted. Take a look here at the booster quick disconnect opening and closing. The booster QD only had minor work done to it, but it's still worth it to verify that it's all good and working, which SpaceX seemingly did here. Want to see more hardware that is being tested and prepared for the return of a booster to the orbital launch mount? Well, here you go. The Raptor quick disconnect system on the orbital launch mount went for a quick spin up and disconnect test, as you can see by the condensation vortex in the middle of the pad. Another component tested and another step towards Flight 5. Yay! All right, you'll never guess what we're going to talk about next. That's right, Flight 5 vehicles rolling to the pad. How'd you know? Over the past week or so, there were signs that SpaceX was getting to roll a booster out to the pad, or at least to the rocket garden, as they were readying a booster transport stand and doing that aforementioned Raptor QD test. At first, we thought there was a chance that it would be Booster 13 rolling to the pad for a static fire test, but it turned out it was Booster 12, even after its hot stage ring had been removed earlier in the week. On September 19th, SpaceX took Booster 12 off of its work stand in Mega Bay 1, where it had sat since July 16th, after completing its 33-engine static fire. Once rolled out of the Mega Bay, we got to see some new additions to the booster, but alas, no decals. But SpaceX did add tapered stringers over the chopstick stabilization points and painted them black. Crews have also painted the tapered stringers just under the lift points. But why did SpaceX add tapered stringers and paint them black? Well, this has to do with how SpaceX plans to catch the booster with the chopsticks closing around a landing booster and it sliding down into the landing rails. This means you don't want to have any stringers that are capable of catching on any part of the chopsticks, so that's why they're tapered. As for the black paint, well, it just looks cool. Right on schedule with the road closure, SpaceX rolled Booster 12 out with its hot stage ring leading the way on its own SPMT, and they both headed down to the launch site. It's unclear as to why SpaceX opted to destack the hot stage ring and restack it at the launch site. There could have been issues with clearance in Mega Bay 1, but crews have lifted boosters with hot stage rings attached before. After that midnight roll, SpaceX lifted Booster 12 and did something rather interesting with it before then placing it on the launch mount. Before this SpaceX post, we were pretty sure the height on the tower at which the catch would take place, based on previous tests, but this confirms it, as Booster 12 was lifted to catch height. This could have been some sort of testing or calibration of the chopsticks, or SpaceX just wanted to show off how it will look when a booster is caught in midair. I mean, it is a pretty dang cool shot. What if SpaceX wanted to test the chopsticks with an accurate simulation of what a booster would be like after landing? Of course, the hot stage ring is jettisoned during stage separation, or just afterward, so a landed booster will not have the hot stage ring attached. And perhaps some calibration and other testing was done with the chopsticks in order to get a better feel of what a landed booster will actually do to them and the tower. Also, it just looks like the booster has just been caught, so they also get a nice photo op out of it. Once placed on the orbital launch mount, SpaceX lowered the sticks back to the vehicle staging location in preparation for the next rollout, which was Ship 30. That's right, for the first time since June 6th, we have a full stack back at the pad. It kind of feels like an eternity, even though it's only been 3.5 months. With Ship 30 having been rolled to the launch site and placed between the chopsticks, crews got ready to install the hot stage ring at the launch site. The SpaceX LR-11000 crane grabbed the load spreader and hooked it to the hot stage ring, although it wouldn't be stacked back onto Booster 12 until the early morning hours. And so on Saturday, which is today, the day I'm recording this, SpaceX stacked Ship 30 atop Booster 12, and here we have it. The first stack for the Flight 5 vehicles. I really hope we're beyond the need for SpaceX to stack and destack, then restack and destack over and over and over again. And hopefully we are. Ideally, the number of stacks a vehicle should experience is 2. Stack it, do a wet dress rehearsal, destack it, fix the FTS up and get it ready for flight, and then restack and fly. So why is SpaceX rolling these vehicles out for full stack testing now when we know that flight is like 2 months away? Well, there could be 2 reasons. The first is that SpaceX wants to conduct a wet dress rehearsal with the full stack, thus fully verifying that the vehicles are finally, indeed, ready for flight. And that seems like it's going to happen because there's road closures this week for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which would indicate some sort of wet dress rehearsal. The other reason, of course, is to pressure the FAA or just show the world, hey, we have a stacked vehicle, let us launch. The likely answer, in my opinion, is a little bit of both. Surely SpaceX wants to show the various regulatory agencies that they're ready to go, but the best way to do exactly that is by conducting the wet dress rehearsal, which is the final test needed before a launch. So they're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Elon Musk even said in that same Flight 5 of Starship is ready to fly tweet that Flight 6 of Starship, which will be Booster 13 and Ship 31, will be ready to fly before Flight 5 gets approval from the FAA. So does that mean both Flight 6 vehicles will be stacked at the pad and conduct a wet dress rehearsal before Flight 5, or just that both vehicles will have completed a static fire before Flight 5? I suspect it's just the latter, but either way, that's still a pretty big flex. Assuming a successful wet dress rehearsal for the Flight 5 vehicles, what happens then? Well, we're a full 2 months out from launch, so we could expect SpaceX to roll these vehicles right back to the production site. Although, maybe not. Today, on Saturday, Kathy Loiters tweeted that there's going to be a beach cleanup here on Boca Chica Beach and invited the public out to help clean up. So if you're in the area, be sure to do that. But in this tweet, she mentions that you will be treated to the glory of a full stack Starship. And this beach cleanup is a week away, so it sounds like we're going to have a full stack around for quite a while. SpaceX could be planning to leave these vehicles out for an extended period of time as yet another way of putting pressure on the FAA. And I personally would love that, because any chance to shoot a full stack Starship is greatly appreciated by myself and all the other photographers out here. So then the question becomes, What is SpaceX going to do over the next 2 months? Well, as mentioned, crews have been painting the reinforcements on the chopsticks, indicating that those modifications may be complete. However, one thing that we might see happen in the coming months is additional chopstick testing with Booster 14.1. Maybe even a drop test or some kind of actual catch test. That would be amazing. Oh my God, there's a coyote over there. So even though a wet dress rehearsal will be all that we expect for a full stack for a few months, we still have a lot of cool testing to look forward to, with a Booster 13 static fire, and maybe even some crazy testing with Booster 14.1. Sweet. On Monday, SpaceX loaded propellant into a Starship full stack for the first time since Flight 4 on June 6, 2024. It was thought this might have been a wet dress rehearsal. However, there were no evacuation notices issued for Boca Chica Village, which are required for filling a Starship with 5,000 tons of propellant. There was also no Marine Safety Information Bulletin issued. Instead, we got a smaller tanking test where SpaceX filled Ship 30 and Booster 12's tanks only about a quarter to 1/3 full at most. After the propellant load was complete, detanking started almost immediately, and then the tanks were depressurized. Then the road was eventually opened as normal. Shortly after the testing concluded, the closures for Tuesday and Wednesday were canceled, as SpaceX is likely to move into doing a wet dress rehearsal either later in the week or sometime next week. Although SpaceX did post to X that a propellant load test was completed and pre-flight checkouts have been completed, so your guess is as good as ours on what SpaceX does next. The situation between the FAA and SpaceX remains a tense one, with the FAA rapidly becoming the actual final roadblock to Flight 5. But at the very least, SpaceX is getting back into action with a good old-fashioned wet dress rehearsal. So rejoice, tank watchers! We have some tanks to watch this week. Make sure to tune into NSF when we stream the wet dress rehearsal. You know the deal. When frosty, us talkie. Once again, thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Oh, also you can click the link in the description if that's more your speed. Or I think there's going to be a QR code here somewhere. I don't know. Either way, thanks for watching this week. We'll see you next week, hopefully after a successful wet dress rehearsal of the full stack. And as always, don't forget, be excellent to each other. Also, watch out for coyotes. Am not snack. Do not eat. Good thing I don't have any bacon in my pockets today.